keen to know what's going to happen, because we see a lot of change in the industry. There is a circular economy package. There is some new legislations about plastics, like single-use restrictions, single-use plastic restrictions, plastics bag issues. We have the new plastics economy. So I think most of us, everybody here, is interested to know what will be the future of the industry. And you, as from the top of the industry, from all around the world, can give us some insight of how do you see the future industry, how we should manage our investments, how we should decide to do the future, what will be the new opportunities. I think that's too much burden for you. It's a very hard question, but I'd like to start with somewhere. So maybe starting with just giving some information, how you see the future. Renato.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, what I can tell you is, from my perspective, if I would know what's going to happen in the future, probably I wouldn't be here, so it's very difficult to predict. But before going into technicality, I would like to, I mean, from my point of view, if we have to rank the challenges we have to afford and approach in these days, I think that the most important ones are the bad image of plastics in the world, and the perceiving of the behavior of our plastics in terms of littering. That's very difficult to combat. We have been trying very hard, and we are still doing, and we will, that's for sure. But nowadays, we see that, I mean, emotional messages are much more effective than studies based on a scientific approach. For instance, a whale with a plastic bag into the stomach is absolutely much more effective than an LCA study on plastic bags, which can demonstrate how good plastic is. And this is the point. We are close to new elections in Europe, so now everybody, I mean, today to talk bad about plastics gives you votes, apparently. But we think that marine litter is key, but plastics ban is not the solution to marine litter. That's for sure. That's not the solution. But we've been talking to the people in Europe. We've been trying to lobby, but at this stage, it's very difficult to find compromising. So we are facing a difficult time. We are going to have the single-use plastic ban, which will take place. I mean, it will be probably approved before the election. So everybody wants to wave the flag of this new thing, and this is affecting not the whole business, but an important part. But of course, this could be only the start. So we need to move forward and be prepared to do something on our part. We still think that, I mean, plastic, as the President Ziavou said, is the future. I mean, if we wanted to contribute, I was reading this morning in the newspaper, because nobody talks about it anymore, but I mean, CO2 emissions and the heating of the planet is a huge problem. If you think, I've seen a study, I don't remember the name of who did it, I think it's an American company, but if we imagine to change from plastic to other products, I mean, in terms of cost, in terms of CO2 emissions, we're going to increase by 10 times the cost and the emissions. So is that the right solution? So we need to be more pragmatic. We need our industry is very dynamic. I mean, our companies in Turkey, in Europe, everywhere, we've always been investing a lot of money in innovation, in new technology. So we think that now, I mean, we have to of course, increase the usage of recycled material. So we need new technology, and this is possible. But in order to do that, as I said into my speech, we cannot do that on our own only. I mean, we need the cooperation of everybody. So the waste has to be collected in the proper way in order to allow us to reuse it. This is the direction, and I do not see any other alternative. The outlook for our business is still positive. I mean, probably some sectors will be highly affected by this SOP directive, but we see for the future that the plastics will grow in any case at the rate over the GDP growth. This is my point of view.
Yeah. So you're talking about the recycled content in the end products. So now the EU legislation is imposing that there should be more recycled material inside the end products.
Yes.
So you say that there is need for new technologies, so there is new opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big threat, but at the same time, if you approach it in a proper way, it can be a good opportunity too. As always, I mean, that's always always the case. The problem is that so far, I mean, the recycled material has been used only to make the material cheaper. It was, I mean, the price perspective was the only issue, making the people moving from virgin to recycled. Nowadays, it's not the case anymore. So people, even the brand owners, they should be prepared. They want to use recycled, so I think they are prepared, if not to pay more, but at least to pay as much as they pay today for the virgin raw material. That's why we need to change approach. So recycled doesn't have to be cheap. It has to be good. It has to be reliable, it has to be sustainable, even on a long term, because one of the problems we are facing today, we have been trying, we have done a lot of trials. The point is that today sometimes you get a good material, sometimes it's not, so it's difficult to rely on this. And that's something that has to be changed. And it has to be changed not only from our side, but also from the rest. And this is, again, a cooperation. I mean, circular economy is a nice concept, but then if everybody doesn't do his own part, it's not going to work, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so waste management also is an important issue, to have the right and quality recycling material.
Yes. I mean, what we are trying to do now in Europe, because I mean, most of the times you don't have to invent anything. I mean, normally you should check in each single country what they are doing and try to choose which is the best practices. I mean, in Italy, for instance, we have a system. Giuseppe and I, we are sitting in the board of this organization, which is called Corepla, and we started roughly, I mean, more than 20 years ago. And now we managed to, we are still far away from the new targets, but we started from zero, and now we reach roughly 42-45% of recycled material in terms of packaging. But we did work very hard. So we made cooperation with the municipality. We did set some standards in terms of quality for the collections. And then we are now getting the results. Of course, the higher is the collection rate, the more difficult it is to get good quality out of it. But we need to work very hard for that.
Sure. I think the same case applies for Turkey at the moment. The legislation in Turkey also puts a target and an enforcement to use, I think, about 4%. Now 4% in the packaging to use recycled material. Yes, 4% we have to use it. But still now it's not very effective in the industry. I don't see, let's say, the effective way about it. Now we will also have today the president of the Recycling Association. He will give us more information about the recycling issue in Turkey and how we can use it. But that's an important issue, that we should be able to use more recycled material in the end products. That would be the future. Huh?
That's for sure. But in these days, it's very difficult to take decisions because of this emotional environment. Because, I mean, we are technical guys. We normally talk to B2B, so we need to do we need to make the proper choice looking on long term. And today you might take the wrong decision. I mean, first of all, I mean, this is my personal point of view. What we've been trying to do so far is, I mean, at least in packaging, to use as less as possible. Yeah. So recycling is one of the solutions. Mechanical recycling, I don't know whether the guys from the raw material will talk about chemical recycling too. So there is not one solution. There are many different kind of. But recycling is part of the solution, but it's not the only one. Because, I mean, for instance, we developed in our own, I mean, my own company, we developed a product which are 7 micron thick. So probably it's not possible to use recycled material for this kind of application. Or we could, if we could switch from 7 to 20. So does it make sense? So that's why I say there is not one solution. We need to identify the application, and for each application we have the right solution. Now we also have to be careful, because even the brand owners, I mean, there are regulations from Europe, but some of the brand owners, they also made a step forward. They want to show the market they are better than the others, so they want to even anticipate what's coming out from the European legislation, and that can be dangerous too. But we need to cooperate again all together.
Yeah. So, Carl, now the floor is yours. How do you think, as Plastics Europe, about this new situation? How do you see the industry as a whole? under these circumstances? Do you still have an optimistic view like me, or you have some pessimistic? What do you say about
Yeah, I think we can all be quite optimistic as far as the business opportunities evolving are concerned, because it has been shown nicely in the video why that is the case, and I think that is not essentially changing. But yes, we do have, of course, a massive change in the perception of plastic as a material, of plastic as an industry. I mean, for example, we have to, I mean, here we are industry, so we are happy about growth rates. You have outlined that very nicely. The importance of the plastic sector also in fast-growing economies like Turkey, but that's also still the case in the European Union as well. So we like to see the growth rates. We also see the growth, the global growth rate. Yeah? We are going now straight to probably almost 350 million tons of plastics production per year. We think that's great, but if people that are very critical on plastic see that, they get scared, because they know that today the reuse and the use of the plastic waste is a terrible record. Yeah? It's hardly anything is recycled. A lot is going in landfills, or worse, ends up in the environment. So they see these same numbers and say, okay, that's millions of additional tons every day end up in the marine environment, in the environment. So they get scared, they get in panic. And you know, you cannot even blame them, because that's the picture that you see. So now for us, as industry, of course, this is a very big challenge. It's together these considerations, it's the pictures that we see from the fish and the birds, also picture of people living on the waste. Yeah, these are all pictures that, of course, say to everybody, this is not sustainable. We cannot continue to work that way. So before we come to the global situation, and maybe Keith will highlight there a little bit more, back to Europe. Also in Europe, we still have a lot of things that we need to improve. For example, we still have the situation that in the European Union, 8 million tons of plastic waste ends up in landfills, meaning that then it's wasted. Yeah? The waste is wasted when it's wasted. So that's the one challenge. We have also in Europe the littering issue. Yeah? And then, of course, in the public debate today, and I have to say that 2018, this year, was a year we haven't seen so far, because of the public debate. We from the plastics industry, we have never received so much attention as we have seen this year. I think all of us have never been so many times on TV or working with the media. This was really incredible what is happening. I think it's an opportunity also, because the public debate has the one advantage. It involves now everybody, because it touches everybody's life, his lifestyle. People become more conscious on where they use plastics, for what they use plastics, and that's an opportunity, and I will come to that in a moment, why that is an opportunity. But at the same time, of course, it's also a threat, because it is being used for different purposes by different interest groups, by different politicians, as an instrument to emotionalize the discussion, to suggest, and I call that, when you know that we have a big debate in Europe on the harms of populism and political populism, but we have also harm of populism in the discussion around plastics, because it's the same concept. You know, there are people that take a rather complex issue, which people cannot really understand, because they are not experts on that, and they shouldn't be experts, and they suggest a very simple solution, and suggest that's the solution. So they say, okay, if people litter, then we ban what they litter. That's the solution. Yeah? Of course it's not the solution. Because if littering is the issue, you have to look at what influences that behavior, and you have to target the behavior, not the material, because a piece of plastics is not good nor bad. Yeah? It's like no other material is by itself good or bad. It's the way how we use it, how we consume it, and how we dispose of it. Yeah? So there we need to address, and I think the of course the solutions are, in the end, we know that is waste management infrastructure, and it is education. I think working with young people remains key for our activities because we have to think that that is a long-term investment in making people aware of what we do and how we live and how we want to live in the future.
Yes. So when was the election in EU? March?
In May.
May. So there is an election, by the way, in May in the EU Parliament.
Yes.
EU Parliament. So before, as you know, Renato and Carl mentioned, it's the same population everywhere in the world, in US, in EU and everywhere. Because now, just before the May elections in the EU Parliament, you see a lot of political movements, political populist new approaches to the subject without some scientific evidence, just to get some green votes just before the election. So until May, I understand from my colleagues that until May we will have much more of these publications all around the world, starting from the EU.
Yeah.
And how about US?
US, well, I think there is, much like you all have said, I think the business aspect for plastics is very bright. However, we must end plastic waste in the environment. As an industry, we must take a leadership role to end plastic waste in the environment. On the business side of things, you know, the US plastics industry has gone through a dramatic increase in investments based off of shale gas and the competitiveness that have come from shale gas. We have over 300 projects that are announced in the chemical and plastic sector valued at over $200 billion. So there's a lot of growth going on in the plastic segment in the United States, and also converters. About 700 different projects have been announced to expand production. So the business side is growing very dramatically. And a lot of that is based off of the benefits of plastics and the sustainability plastics can bring. You talked about some lower greenhouse gas emissions compared to alternatives. If you look across plastics in 16 consumer goods sectors, plastics have 4 times less environmental impact compared to the alternatives. So plastics offer tremendous benefits, and I'm very optimistic about it from that perspective. However, to get there, to keep using plastics and deliver those benefits to society, we've got to end plastic waste in the environment. We are seeing policy proposals all across the globe that would adversely affect the plastics industry, would control the amount of plastics resin produced and put a cap on the amount of plastic resin produced, as is being discussed. The United Nations, there's a work group meeting right now to talk about potentially a treaty based off of plastics and marine litter. The things being discussed there include things like a cap on plastic production. That clearly is not the right approach. Plastics offer dramatic sustainability benefits, but we have to keep plastics out of the environment. The studies today are pretty dramatic. Studies as well as images. I mean, the images tell 1,000 words, et cetera, but, and you see some of them coming out of Asia, and they are particularly damning to our industry and damning to the current uses of plastics. The studies show about 8 million metric tons of plastics are released into the environment every year. Most of that from very rapidly developing countries in Asia that lack basic waste management. In many of these countries, less than 40% of the waste is ever collected to be managed in any way. So that's naturally leaking out into the environment, and of course the plastics are floating and people see them, and provides a very compelling image for these policies to restrict plastic. That's clearly not the right approach. Putting in place infrastructure to collect and manage waste is the right approach. Many of the leading chemical and plastics industry companies are joining together with brand owners today and talking about developing an initiative to end plastic waste in the environment. I think that's something we must all get involved in to help solve this problem, or the future for the plastics industry will not be bright. So we have to end plastic waste in the environment.
So So I understand that the business in the US is wonderful at the moment.
At the moment.
That's what I say.
At the moment.
At the moment.
But we're
yeah.
starting to get these policies like those, many policy proposals like those coming from Europe. So we're seeing many of those today.
Yeah.
They just had elections, that's why. I mean, they just had elections, the midterm ones. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so now the Mediterranean region. So we're coming more focused on the Mediterranean region, which Turkey is an important part. And I think that on one case, for example, for the marine litter, as Kate said, it's mainly from the Asian countries, Indonesia, China, who are contributing most to marine litter. Now the main focus in Europe and US is on plastics is about the marine litter. So how about the situation in the Mediterranean region, in our region, and what is your opinion about also the future as we in this part of the panel?
So, regarding the Mediterranean, of course, many of the comments and of the consideration are valid for the Mediterranean. Marine litter and the waste management is the key. But the key is how to manage the waste in the proper way. And the central focus for a correct waste management and to solve the problem even of the Mediterranean is the differentiate collection of the waste. I give you only one very recent example. You know, in Italy we have the Po Valley, the Po River. Mm-hmm. Po River is the river who is collecting practically the water of 40% of Italian population, means 25 million of inhabitants. We as Corepla, with Renato and the other colleague that we are sitting in the board of Corepla, we decided to go and see how much plastic debris is brought from the Po River in the Adriatic Sea, which of course is polluted. And we made this experiment for 3 months.
Yes.
And I want to say to you the result. And the result is really very surprising. We expect in several tons, yes. We can say, Renato, but we are not tons. What at the end we've collected at the end of the Po River with them. All the plastic debris in 3 months of 25 million of people were about 100 kilos. 100 kilos. So nothing. This is why. Why? The reason is because in the Po Valley we have, we can say, a very good collection waste system. And this is the crucial point. Collection waste system of Veneto, of Lombardy is working very well. And at the end we discover that the river could be alive and could be without plastic. And if we apply this system also to all the other countries which are putting the river in the Mediterranean, I think that we can have a very good step forward. But I want to conclude this with something that for us is very important. Marine litter is really the big problem. But sometimes we think that plastic is covering other problems. Plastic is not the major problem of the marine litter, for example, for the rivers, but the problem is the effect of the absence of the infrastructure. Some of the rivers are really without life anymore. And it's not caused by plastic, because plastic is an inert material without effect on the life of the river and of the sea. But the problem is the lack of infrastructure of many countries. So, what Renato and all the other panelists, colleagues are saying is completely true. We have to push in order to have first, infrastructure, second, differentiated collection of plastics.
Okay. So, during the first part of this panel, I'd like to summarize what I understand, just to
so we can
stress
check
out.
what you did
Yes.
properly. Then.
Is it
Okay.
true? Yeah. So the main issue is that first we have some emotional case all around the world, which are not coinciding with the real scientific fact. This is one problem, and mostly emotional approach is taking lead rather than the scientific approach.
Yes.
This is one of the main key issues. And also adding to that, in the European side, we are going to have the elections in May. So until May, we would have much more publications against plastic and easy solutions, like Carl said, let's ban it, let's not use it, this kind of things from the EU side. We might expect this until May. This is something what I could get from it. But on positive side, I see that there is new opportunities also, like because of the new legislation, there would be need to use more recycled material inside end applications, in end product applications. There will be much more new innovations in the recycling industry. And in high quality, let's say not downgraded, but upgraded plastic recycling in
That's
this
a
field.
challenge.
This will be a new opportunity in this business, which we can see for sure. For US market, I can see that US is much more, let's say, these days, the industry is growing, the pace of the industry is good, but still, as Kate said, waste management would be one of the important issues for the plastics industry to continue this growth without, let's say, negative public issue on that one. So this is generally what I get out of our first part of the panel. But I'd like to, in this part of the panel, I'd like to have, apart from this recycling and this, let's say, standard issues about the threats, I'd like to see opportunities. Is there any new opportunities that you see for the plastic industry at the moment? This is something that I'm interested. So I'm sure that all these people are interested. Okay, we know now the threats. We will for sure work for these threats and try to adapt and try to get new positions. But what will be the new opportunities for the industry? What would you say, Renato?
Well, basically, what I could say, I will probably repeat what I've said already. I mean, I think plastic today is seen as a problem, but plastic at the same time is the solution for the problems. This is the point. I mean, it's very easy to point the finger on plastic because it's bad, but it's not politically correct to point the finger on uneducated people who lead to the plastics, to dispose the plastics into the environment. And so that's why, even as UPC, what we're trying to do, I mean, to stimulate an educational program together with the European Committee in order to explain people what they have to do with plastics. But after having done that, we need to be organized with the waste collections. As an opportunity, I see now the trend is clear. So we need to tackle, as I said, the end of life of our product. In order to do that, we need somehow to reuse it, to put it into the market. And for this reason, we see, okay, the opportunity for the raw material people, I think chemical recycling for us is to reuse it in most of our products. And this is the main opportunities, the main opportunity I see. But in order to do that, we need to work very hard on eco design. We need to work very hard with the machine manufacturer. Probably, screw design and machine adjustments will not be the same as for conventional raw material. But this is going to be a great opportunity. So now we see more. I can see that emotionally we see more threats than opportunities. But I think I don't see any future without plastics. That's not possible. I know it's difficult to say that to politicians, especially now, but I mean, I've seen some videos. I think in the past, Federchimica in Italy did one, and I've seen a video from the French guys. I mean, if you would live in a world without plastics, now we would be sitting on a sand. I mean, everything would disappear from this place. Sure. So this is not possible. But that's not something we can say. So we need to act. It's not enough to defend ourselves saying that plastic is good. We need to show that it's really possible to reuse it and to put it in cycle again. So this is the biggest threat, but at the same time the biggest opportunity I see for our industry.
Yeah. So you also mentioned the eco-design and also machine producers also helping the industry for this change. So there's also some machine producers over here. I see some of them from the industry. So they would be also working close to the industry to achieve this recycling possibilities, also on eco-design and increasing efficiencies for the industry.
They have to. I mean, I remember when we started, I mean, our company got 50 years old last year, so we are in the business for quite a long time. And I mean, originally when we started, we had the mono-layer material. Then we switched to 3-layer. Now we are up to 5. In the future, we even have a 7-layer lines. So technology is evolving in order to use, I mean, to get better properties on the film. So now, because we personally did some trials already with cycled material, but the technology, despite being similar, is different. So you need the help of the raw material people too. So probably a number of layers, or as I said, other screw designs, but that's something that has to be changed anyway. We cannot just switch, because if it was that easy, we would have done it already. So we need to make the technology develop and in this point of view as well. But I think it's possible. It is possible. And I don't know, I know some of the converters, probably some of them are sitting here, but I know that, I mean, we are all very dynamic. So we're not afraid to invest money. We believe in what we are doing. I love personally what I'm doing, so I'm not afraid to invest money. The risk is that, being the situation so complicated and emotional, the risk is that you might invest in the wrong direction. But I think that the future for plastic is bright. Yeah. And another problem I would like to point out is that, as Carl said, in certain countries we managed to eliminate landfill. Yeah, but in those countries where we do manage to eliminate landfill, we have a huge energy recovery. Yeah. So this is clear. It has to be clear, even if the European Commission that doesn't want to talk about it. But if you want to eliminate landfill, waste energy recovery is a must. Otherwise, we will never achieve this point. So Germany, Scandinavian countries, they are close to zero. In Italy, we are not. But we are not allowed to set up new plant for energy recovery. So that's, for sure, that's not the only solution, but that should be taken into consideration as part of the solution too.
Yeah. So now we come to another point, is that normally in Turkey, we don't have a lot of energy recovery. Only we have one company who's making energy recovery, İzeydaş. Apart from that, in Turkey, it's mainly landfill or recycling, mechanical recycling. So you say that if we want to achieve the targets of using more recycled material in the end product, it's also an important issue, important factor to use also incineration and going to plastics to energy, recycled to energy phase would be another part. This is what you mentioned. I can understand.
Yeah, I mean, physically, I think it's impossible to achieve zero landfill without incineration. That's impossible. I'm not afraid to declare that, but I mean, I don't see any other. I don't know whether the people sitting in this panel can say something different, but I don't think it's really possible to do that.
You had an important message to our machine producers, because we have also a big industry for plastic machinery production here in Turkey, and it's picking up really hard in exports also. I can see some of them here. So you say that we are not afraid of investing as plastic industry, but we need more innovations to follow up the industry. Yes, Carl. So what would you say about opportunities? I'm more focused now on the opportunities.
Yeah, the present European Commission under Juncker, I think their biggest single project was the circular economy package. And circular economy as a concept, our industry over the past 4 years also went through a transition in their own view on circular economy. Circular economy now is seen more an opportunity than a threat. The circular economy package, of course, had in particular the plastic strategy. Plastic strategy, because plastics is seen as the biggest challenge in converting a society into a circular society, mainly because the recycling rate of plastics is much lower than that of other materials. So, in a very constructive approach, we as the plastics industry, the converters, also the resin manufacturers have agreed on a voluntary commitment that we made in January of this year. This is part of the EU plastic strategy, where we have a whole basket of concrete measures on how we convert into a circular economy. Also, you see that, for example, plastics manufacturers are increasingly engaging themselves also in the recycling sector. So there are several recycling companies today that are owned by plastics manufacturers. So you see there is a important dynamics going on because it is seen that by converting to circular economy there are opportunities. Opportunities, of course, also with the proper usage of the waste, because the waste has a value. The waste is a resource, and that's the beginning point of the whole logic of circular economy. So also I can say that, yeah, I think it was a milestone for the industry when the industry a year ago decided, yes, we are going to go to this commitment, which in particular for the resin manufacturers is a dramatic future change of their existing business portfolio. Now, in terms of business opportunities, or how do we get to the higher recycling rates of plastics? Here the key is that we have achieve a high degree of collaboration. Traditionally, each industry or even each company is working in its own silo. Yeah? That's the traditional way how we are working. So you optimize everything within one company. Maybe an industry has optimized things, but working across industry with other stakeholders is at the very beginning. So key here is, for example, are the consumer brands. Yeah? I mean, when we talk about litter, what it is, it's always certain plastic products, and the majority of that is packaging, the majority of that is from consumer brands. Of course, the public always talks about the plastic waste and not about the Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola waste. Yeah, that's also an interesting feature. But what we do as part of that commitment, that we have now established new platforms that are designed to connect us with all the other stakeholders. Other stakeholders means these are waste management, is retailing, even the EPR, I mean municipalities, but very important, the consumer brands. Why? Because in order to convert a stream that today is linear, where we make and then dispose of something, you need to rethink the whole process. You need to think from producing the resin up to what happens with the final product. How can you put that economically in the right waste stream so that actually can take advantage of the economic value that is in the waste. And that is not the case largely today, and that's what we are working on there, and that's of course a massive trend towards collaboration across all stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. Very clear message. And Kate, so in US the business is going good in pace, we understand, but what kind of industries are mainly pushing the way in the industry, in the plastic industry? Which parts of the plastic industry is moving the pace? I understand that in Europe, mainly recycling industry is one of the key issues, and it's going to be more opportunities in that one. But how about the situation in US now?
The U.S. is similar. I think in terms of the business side, resin producing is growing very dramatically, as I mentioned, with the production of new plants based on shale gas. I think there are huge opportunities related to circular economy in the United States as well. And we've created goals in the U.S. plastics industry to recycle and recover all plastic packaging by 2040. So those are huge goals for the United States.
That's a must, or it's just a pledge or a voluntary?
It's a
goal?
Commitment. It's a commitment for the U.S. plastics industry. So, and to maintain a sustainable industry, we know we need to get there. We need to end plastic waste in the environment, and part of that is collecting and recovering plastics. There are a lot of new opportunities that have come with that commitment and come with the changes that have happened in our industry, either the circular economy approaches or also with China and the restrictions that have happened on China's import of plastic and other waste. Historically, there's been a bit of a challenge that's come from exports to China, and that was that there was no incentive in the United States to invest in good sorting of materials because they could just go to China. Today, that's not happening, so there's new opportunities to come in and use this plastic material for new applications. We've seen companies put in place new facilities for taking polystyrene, converting it back to styrene monomer that can then go into new food service. A company called Agilix has built a plant in the West Coast to do that. There are other companies that are similarly coming up with new technology and approaches to taking plastic and making it into something else. Some are making it into jet fuel that can be used for airlines. There's other applications that we see potentially growing. Use of plastic in asphalt, a lot of research and opportunities around that, as well as concrete, so some infrastructure opportunities. Continued opportunities in durable goods all around the United States. I think we look at the real megatrends in automotive. The autonomous vehicles will require lightweighting, electrification will require lightweighting, and plastics are going to help deliver that. So some huge opportunities as the new infrastructure, or the new autos of the future are going to create some opportunities for plastics there too. As well as in building and construction. In the US, we still have artificial restrictions on the use of plastics in pipe, for example, all around the country. And about 50% of municipalities say that pipe must be metal only or concrete only, and those are artificial. And break those down, and those present another $10 billion market for plastic pipe every year. So there's some huge opportunities there as well.
But how is the landfill situation in the US?
Landfill, much like Southern Europe, I think most of our packaging waste and non-durable goods goes to landfill. We don't have much waste to energy. There's only about 80-some waste to energy plants in the United States, and we don't see that growing. Our circular economy goals are based off of increased mechanical recycling, because we have a long way to go to even catch up to Europe on mechanical recycling, but also chemical recycling and those other technologies to convert plastics to energy in a way that doesn't include mass burn, really. I mean, mass burn and incineration with energy recovery is a good technology, but also it has high costs compared to other infrastructure in the United States. We have abundant natural gas, and waste energy facilities in the United States are very expensive compared to natural gas-based energy facilities, and would require very high tipping fees that people aren't willing to pay here in the United States.
Yeah. And I understand. Yes, Carl.
Yeah, I think important is to recognize that we have a lot of regional differences. Yeah. I mean, because the situation in Europe, where energy is expensive, is obviously a very different one than in the US or in other regions of the world where energy is not expensive. And there are many other reasons. So again, the main point, and I wanted to add to what Renato said, when we talk about the solutions, we have to recognize there is not one solution that fits all. Yeah, recycling is excellent, but it's not the solution. That we need many solutions. Innovation, I'm convinced that we will see a lot of innovation in a lot of solutions that we don't even know or that we don't even think about today. So we need to think that we need to have a whole basket of different solutions. Actually, the circular economy concept, which says you reduce, you reuse, you recycle, you recover, is not so bad. Yeah, I mean, it's the concept is a pretty good one, but we have to recognize that as in the solution basket we have everything at the end of waste. Yes, mechanical recycling. There are now a lot of investments going into the direction of chemical recycling. So that will be part of the solution. Waste to energy will remain an important part of the overall solution. And even biodegradable polymers are part of the solution. Yeah, we cannot, it's not an ideological debate on what is the, that there is one correct and there's an incorrect solution.
Yeah. Yes. So also what Kate mentioned, I think I'll just give a ball to our Tudan president. He mentioned about China's restrictions on the importation of waste to China, which has affected the industry all around the world, also in Turkey, because after China last year decided that it will not import the waste from other foreign countries, it has changed a lot of business view in all around the world. Now I understand from Kate that also there's a lot of recycling companies going inside the business, because beforehand there was no business opportunity because all the waste was going to China, but now it is there in US and you have to recycle it to use it. So that's also another issue that you had. That was an interesting point. And also just to make some remark about what Carl said, Carl, is about big petrochemical companies, polymer producers in Europe, now acquiring a lot of recycling companies. That's an important issue, because normally when we are thinking about the size of the petrochemical companies, the revenues, the business volume, and the recycling company, if you compare it, the petrochemical company with a recycling company, it may seem a small investment, but it shows a way. This is, I think, an important issue, that these companies are getting more interested in the recycling industry, and the big giants in Europe are buying the recycling companies. That's an important signal for the industry. And Giuseppe, I'd like to have the end remarks of our panel from you. What would you say about the points? Any comments about the points that we mentioned here, or anything you want to add? Then I'd like to go with the audience if they have any questions.
I would start from the figures. That I give you the figures of Europe, but are the same in Italy and are the same, I suppose, all around the world. In Europe, we produce, we put in the market plastic for around 50 million of tons, 50. Something more of this 50 million is the same in Italy. For something more in Italy or in other countries. Something more of the half of this quantity is transforming itself in waste. So we have approximately in Europe 27 million of tons of waste, of plastic waste. Of these, in a very ambitious way, of these 27 million, the European Commission put a target to recycle mechanically 50%. So other 13 million of tons. This is the situation. In this moment, and this is the future, in this moment we recycle in Europe, without exporting anymore in the other countries, in China mainly, we are recycling in Europe only 3 million tons. 3 million tons instead, mechanically, instead of 13 or 14. So we have the ambitious goal, very ambitious goal, and this is the future for research, for everything, to reach or to add more than 10, 11 million tons to the recycled plastics, starting from 3, arriving to 14 in 2025. In my opinion, is rather impossible, but we shall do our best, mainly through the research.
We are used to Mission Impossible, so we do our best.
But this is, in this moment, and I think for the future, we have always to have in mind these figures. 100 is what we produce, 50% approximately the waste, I supported Alpha already for the packaging we are near, because everything is depending on the collection first. We arrive at 50. The big question mark is what we shall do also of the other 50%, of the other 14 million tons. And here Renato has been, and we of course agreed, that is clear. At least for the moment, we need incineration or thermovalorization, because landfill is really the last option. Landfill means leakage in the environment and so on. So we have first to avoid landfill. So for the other 50%, we need thermovalorization, and of course, regarding research, we need chemical recycling. But I am coming from the industry. I spent my life in the industry of plastic industry and petrochemical industry. Here, the industry is a little late. We are putting a lot of money in the research regarding chemical recycling, because this is the future. Mechanical recycling, chemical recycling means to have building blocks to produce plastic. So it's the circular economy that is the ambitious goal. But for the moment, we think that to avoid landfill, we have to go also to the thermovalorization. And I want to close with my experience. I spent my life in the industry, and the plastic industry already had in the research, all the plastic industry in the research, they had two very big guidelines that are still very, very, very valid. The first was the safety of the product. Plastic are safe, and this is a big advantage, and I fully agree with Renato. This is really the advantage of plastics also for the future. Plastic is the most screened, observed material in the world, with a lot of legislation regarding safety. And plastic are completely safety. This was one of the biggest guidelines of the industry. The second biggest guideline, and is still valid, is the weight. The industry continuously wants to reduce the weight of the plastic goods. This too big stream of our research, and are still valid in order to improve recycling and so on. And these are the three biggest guidelines that all the filière is following.
Yes, that's good. But one point, you said it is the most screened industry, most safe. I hope that it is the most, it's not the most suspected one. The Usual Suspects film. I remember that Usual Suspects.
But if I can, just to reinforce the message that Giuseppe gave, is that, I mean, we have had many meetings with big brand owners. Yeah. So I cannot mention the name, but I mean, because of course everybody's worried about the future of the packaging and so on, but no one of them was looking for alternative to plastics. They wanted to find a solution within plastics, either renewable resources or biodegradable, compostable, or lighter, or with recycled material. But almost all of them, they would say, okay, we need to do something, but we want to do it within plastics. So this is the clear message I want to give to the audience today.
That's a good message to end the panel.
Please.
So with this one, I'd like to sum up and finalize our panel. I'd like to thank our fellow panelists for their kind contribution and the audience for their questions. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz herkese. Panelimizi burada tamamlıyoruz.